preparing a webinar.
Thank you. Just give us one moment. According to the PC begun.
Recording to the cloud started.
Thank you.
Backup is rolling.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing for the Subcommittee on Capital Budget. At this time, would all panelists please turn on their videos for verification purposes. To minimize any disruptions, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you'd like to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony.council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you, Chair Rosenthal. We're ready to begin.
Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm Councilmember Helen Rosenthal. I'm Chair of the Subcommittee on Capital Budget. I'd like to welcome my colleagues on the committee, Councilmember Brooks Powers, Councilmember Adams. The subcommittee conducts oversight of the administration's planning and delivery of the capital projects. We often focus on procurement inefficiencies, but we're always looking to identify and support best practices and promising innovations. So today our focus is on the promise and reality of design build procurement. For so many years, state law has required the city to have design, bid, build as their framework. But over the last several years, the state has allowed itself to do design build practices with great results. They have had savings of often a third of the value of their project, going from $120 million project down to the actual of 90 million because they're using the design build framework. Of course, the city has been very interested in getting the authority to do that and lobbied the state very heavily. The city council members joined in and lobbied as well. Over the past few years, we've brought about the state administration agreeing and giving the city the authority to use the design build framework for many of its projects. In March 2018, so a full year prior to the pandemic, the state granted a sort of narrow design build authorization for the BQE cantilever replacement, Rikers Island jail replacement, and NYCHA repairs. I'm eager to hear about the success of those design build projects. But then in December 2019, the design build authority was expanded to include additional city agencies and city projects. We have to be mindful that the state's grant of authority to the city is set to sunset at the end of December 2022. So we're more than halfway through our window to justify our efforts to demonstrate our results. And again, if you look online at the state's wonderful booklet showing the success of their roughly 20 design build projects, you can see that now's the time that we want the city to start showing us if not projected successes with projects well on their way, at least plans for what they expect to do. Let's be clear, there was a pause placed on construction for a year, and we can understand why that might slow down some progress. There was a report due to the state back in June 2020, and we can understand why that report was never filed, given that we were in the middle of the pandemic. But the pause has been lifted for over a year. And it's so far, we're in October. The second report was due June 2021, and the city has not put forth that report to the state. And so the public is wondering, where are we? Why aren't we as far as we hope to be? And what do we think about whether or not we'll be in a position to ask the state to grant us, the city, the authority to continue with design build, which we had such high hopes for? Look, the fact that we don't have the report, the fact that we don't see anyone testifying from the administration who would be the coordinator of all the agencies, they're not here to testify today. So this lack of coordination in public record explains the need for the legislation that's being heard today, 2328, which I sponsored, which would impose reporting obligations on the administration on their use of design build. One important way our proposed reporting is different from what they are required to report to the state is that our bill seeks to tie the reporting to the capital commitment plan, so the council and the public can understand how individual projects are progressing and how savings are being accounted for. In this way, I'm hoping to further institutionalize the use of design build while enhancing transparency and accountability. This hearing would not have happened without the staff who are amazing and have prepared all of us for this hearing. So I'd like to thank the Finance Division subcommittee staff, Nathan Toth, the Deputy Director, Chima Obicher, the Unit Head, Monica Bujek, the Financial Analyst, Rebecca Chasen, Senior Counsel, Noah Brick, Assistant Counsel. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our committee counsel to go over some procedural items and to swear in the witnesses, which include, again, Commissioner of DDC, and some of the other city officials. But again, I want to emphasize not anyone from OMB or the Office of Operations. Those that we would have expected would be tasked with pulling together the report. Thank you, Committee Counsel.
Thank you, Chair Rosenthal. I'm Noah Brick, counsel to the city's council subcommittee on capital budget. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by the host. I will be calling, I'm sorry here. So we're first going to hear testimony from the administration, which will be followed by questions from council members and then members of the public. From the administration, we'll hear testimony from Commissioner Torres Springer of BDC. Also here for Q&A from BDC are Allison Landry, Assistant Commissioner of Public Buildings, Design Build, and Wayne Lambert, Chief Diversity and Industry Relations Officer. I believe that David Worley, General Counsel, is attempting to join us. For Q&A from DOT, we have Tanvi Pandya, Executive Director of the BQE Design Build, and Miranda Alquist, Assistant Director of Legislative Affairs. I will now administer the oath. Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? Commissioner Torres Springer.
Yes.
Don't know if Mr. Verley is with us yet. Ms. Landry?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Pandya?
Yes.
And Ms. Alquist?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. Commissioner, you may begin when ready.
Great. Thank you very much, and good morning, Chairwoman Rosenthal, members of the subcommittee. Pleasure to be with you this morning. As noted, I'm the Commissioner of the New York City Department of Design and Construction. I'm pleased to be joined today by, soon I think we'll be joined by our General Counsel, David Baroli, who is having some technical difficulty, Allison Landry, Assistant Commissioner for Design Build in our Public Buildings Division, and Wayne Lambert, who is our Chief Diversity and Industry Relations Officer. We also, as noted, are joined by staff from the Department of Transportation. We appreciate the opportunity to testify about Intro 2328. The city as a whole is supportive of design build reporting requirements. We respectfully request that any local law mirror state reporting requirements, which were included in the 2019 law that you were describing, Chairwoman Rosenthal. Over the past 2 years, DDC has demonstrated that the city can benefit from using multiple approaches to project delivery, where for decades we were confined to using a single approach, low bid, design, bid, build, delivery. In a span of a few months in the last couple of years, two important developments occurred. First, the state authorized the temporary use of design build, which permitted implementation of a new aggressive program at DDC and across city government. This was followed by the state declaration of emergency in response to the COVID pandemic that has permitted DDC to use other delivery models, really construction manager as contractor, to build out urgently needed healthcare facilities. In both cases, we've been able to deliver critical projects in a fraction of the usual time while staying on budget, meeting ambitious MWBE goals, and using high quality organized labor. So let me give you some background on our progress in the use of design build, which we appreciate the opportunity to do. We were initially authorized by the state legislature to use design build for the borough-based jails program, as you noted, Councilwoman, which will allow us to construct the critical facilities necessary to close Rikers Island. A broader state authorization of design build was signed at the end of 2019. On the borough-based jails, I'm pleased to report that that program is on track with procurement, design, and construction supporting a completion of all 4 facilities and closure of Rikers Island in 2027. We began the required 2-step procurement process for this program immediately after the October 2019 ULURP approval of the 4 borough-based jail facilities. By March of this year, we had a design build team on board for the demolition of a municipal parking lot and construction of new parking and community facilities in Queens. You can see that work is underway. The project is on schedule to be completed by late 2022, which is just 3 years after the start of procurement. A project of this magnitude, I think we all know from long experience, would normally take 6 years or more to complete. So that's a time savings for that project of at least 3 years. Procurement is well underway for construction of new jail facilities in Queens, the Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn, and site preparation will be in full swing next year, paving the way for delivery of smaller, more humane facilities to be in place on all 4 sites by 2027 as planned. Completing an unprecedented $8.5 billion program by 2027 will be historic. It is only because we can leverage the innovation, collaboration, and time savings permitted by design build that we can do so. Speaking more broadly to our design build program, other than the borough-based jails, following that broader state authorization, we as an agency quickly took steps to create the capacity to use design build systematically. This included the reorganization and hiring of staff to manage the new program. We retained outside expertise to support us. We trained our project managers, procurement, and legal staff. We developed a toolkit of procurement procedures, contract documents, and project management tools. The city is now completing design build specific project labor agreements that will permit a safe and seamless transition into construction. All of these activities required considerable work and took place during the height of the COVID pandemic. Several of the two-step RFQ, RFP procurements that we need to do for a design build as currently authorized are close to completion. Our first two projects are operations and maintenance facilities for the Parks Department, serving Orchard Beach and the Rockaways. Work on both projects will commence early next year, and we expect them to be completed almost 3 years ahead of a typical design bid build project. Several more projects are slated to enter the design and construction phase next year as well, with similarly tight schedules. Notably, DDC has taken on a new portfolio of community resource centers across the city. This includes the new Marlboro Agriculture and Education Center, a multi-purpose facility featuring a greenhouse in Gravesend, Brooklyn, the Mary Callie Dalton Community Center, a parks facility including an indoor pool on Staten Island's North Shore, and the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Center, a parks facility long sought by advocates in Flatbush. All will have design build teams on board next year to begin collaborative meetings with the community and undertake early site preparations. DDC has two divisions. I've described the work of our public buildings division. Our infrastructure division is also beginning to roll out design build projects that will focus on programmatic solutions to citywide initiatives, most notably including our green infrastructure portfolio, an acceleration initiative to create more detention and retention capacity across the city that was recently included in the city's extreme weather response task force plan. We're also using design build to implement our massive pedestrian ramp program that aims to upgrade the city's 180,000 street corners for ADA accessibility by 2034. So that's the summary of where we are with design build. I did want to note related to our COVID response efforts that design build is only one approach. Other important alternative delivery methods would allow the city to realize even greater time and cost savings. For example, and council members have heard me talk about this a lot before, in 2020, DDC delivered an expansive portfolio of urgent healthcare facilities during the peak of the pandemic using construction manager as contractor, which employs a selection process similar to design build. At the height of the pandemic, DDC, our construction managers, design teams, and contractors coordinated closely and continuously to complete 3 large permanent COVID centers of excellence within months. The centers of excellence would have taken years to complete under the design bid build mode that we normally operate in. Because we could focus on design, construction, and delivery, unburdened by layers of bureaucracy, we showed there is a better way. Again, I have to emphasize, we built these facilities in 6 months. They certainly would have taken 6 years to build in design bid build. For the city to have a broadly more efficient capital project delivery, we must have access not only to design build, but to tools like CM build, CM as manager, CM at risk, progressive design build, and other permutations of the process tailored to unique demands of site conditions. Now, before I wrap up, if you will, a word about our MWBE performance. Our program remains one of the city's best. We account for nearly half of the city's MWBE spend under Local Law 1 from year to year. There will be no drop off in our design build portfolio. In implementing our new design build programs, we have set MWBE goals of 30% for both the design portion and the construction portion of our contracts to provide more opportunities for MWBE design firms. Our emergency work during the pandemic delivered high MWBE utilization rates, sometimes as high as 46% in the case of those centers of excellence that I was referring to earlier. And we were able to more efficiently employ MWBE firms as prime contractors and first-tier subcontractors as well. Finally, all of city government has to be part of the effort to improve delivery This is not the purview of a single agency or branch of government. For example, we've worked successfully with the Department of City Planning and City Planning Commission and the Public Design Commission to ensure they can conduct their charter mandated reviews effectively and efficiently within the somewhat different structure of design build. We continue to work with OMB for their sign off to proceed on several steps during and after procurement, tailoring our processes to the specifics of the design build schedule. So in conclusion, DDC's design build program is delivering on its promise of more efficient selection and delivery. Our top priority for the coming months is to move our portfolio forward and to pass improved, more flexible design build reauthorization in Albany next year. This is essential, or will again be confined to using the antiquated low bid model that has burdened the city for decades and is the source of so much frustration. Thank you, and we're very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Committee counsel, am I next? Just checking. Yes.
You are. You can ask your questions for.
Okay. I'd like to start by, of course, thanking you, Commissioner, but I see a few of my colleagues are here. If at any time you would like to ask questions and interrupt me, please just raise your hand and we can count on you. We can call on you immediately. I guess, Commissioner, I mean, you paint a rosy picture, and you also paint an urgent picture. Rosy because you list project after project. All of this is news to me, and I'm sure news to the public. With your so well defined presentation, why can't you, what's holding the city back from your putting this information up online or sending it to the state? I know it's just a basic question and I'll get into details, but I'm a little just, you know, of course, impressed with what you're saying. Why wouldn't that have information already gone to the state to show them, you know, to set the stage for them to reauthorize?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilwoman. I do want to say that we at DDC are make an effort to be as transparent as we can. Certainly all of the procurement that I've described is a matter of public record. And also it's worth noting, you know, on our website, we published a report, it's online, summarizing some of our activities during 2020. And really most of what I've described is summarized there. So I think it is certainly online. In terms of the reporting to the state, which I know is the concern that you're raising, each respective agency in the city that's been authorized to use design build and report on it pursuant to the law has been working with our colleagues at City Hall to generate the report and submit it to the state upon completion. We're actively at work on the publication and expect to have it very shortly. I think I would say on behalf of some of our agency colleagues that COVID-19 and the effort to stand up the design build program at the same time meant that things did not progress. There was a pause, as you described in your opening remarks, and so things did not progress with many of the projects. And so the information that's sought by the law, you know, is not available was not available only a few months into the creation of the program. But now we're in a full restart, and the city's capital program is moving forward, and so we're working with our partner agencies and City Hall to submit the report.
I mean, you know, then again, for the record, is there anyone from City Hall who's responsible for pulling this all together here to testify today?
I don't believe anyone from City Hall is on the call today, but I'm happy to represent the administration.
I'm not laying the burden on you. I'm, for the record, making it clear that no one is here from City Hall, and they're the ones who have the responsibility to produce the record and produce this document. And that is disappointing, disconcerting. It doesn't, I don't know, again, I'm rooting for you, but I don't know how we can ask the state to reauthorize if no one from City Hall is interested in testifying on this.
Council member, I do just want to emphasize that the report is largely complete, and we will be sharing it with the council in the very near future as.
I don't know how you know that, given that City Hall's responsible for putting it together, but if you do, that's great. And shortly is always a good amount of time. I don't know if shortly means before this administration is over. I don't know if it means 2 weeks from now. I don't know if it means we could have a hearing to discuss it or not. Shortly doesn't answer that question, and so much is at stake. I guess I would say, given that DDC is the lead agency and it does apply mostly to your projects, and you've had in your testimony, we can see of such a good record, why wouldn't you just publish that online now so the public could see what you're saying?
It's just a report that's coordinated across a number of different agencies, which is, we are coordinating and City Hall is coordinating, and the report will be completed very shortly. I'm certain it will be during this administration.
Okay, so, and again, for the record, it was due June 2021. We're already 4 months late.
Yeah, as I was describing, just again to emphasize, COVID has disrupted lives and work across the city. This is one of the ways, is that the capital program for the city has been disrupted because of the sort of near total budget crisis. The capital program across the city was put on pause. So
yeah. No, I'm very well aware, and we've had hearings about that. Yeah. And you've testified about that, so we're well aware. Can I just ask who at City Hall or which office at City Hall is responsible for coordinating this report? Who is it you're turning your documents into?
I'd have to ask City Hall to get back to you. We work with a number of deputy mayors, the offices of the first deputy mayor, the deputy mayor for operations, but it is a coordinated approach.
So again, just for the public record, it's 10:35. If anyone from City Hall is aware of this hearing, this hearing will be continuing for at least an hour. Feel free to jump on the Zoom if you need the information for that. We can send it over to you in order to give us, the public, an understanding of why this report is 4 months late and when shortly is. I appreciate that. And then, Commissioner, you did refer to a 2020 report, which does reference design build, but I'm looking at it right now online and not seeing the type of detail that you just explained. And I guess I'm getting the point across. The public deserves to know, especially because the city lobbied so hard, and we're in a minute. We're at reauthorization, and I don't know if you're, of course, there's upheaval between administrations, but I hope there are some people who are beginning to lobby the state to get an extension if that's what you want to ask for. And secondly, I would imagine you would want to be lobbying very heavily about the additional things that you mentioned that you were able to achieve with the emergency authority, the construction, the CM as manager at risk, et cetera. Will that be included in the application to the city for extended, from the city to the state for extended authority?
Yeah, thanks, Councilwoman. First of all, I just want to be clear. I'm very confident that the city will be giving the state legislature and the governor's office all of the information that they need well in advance to reauthorize design build, which needs reauthorization by the end of the next calendar year. So there's over a year.
Yes, although you started, the
I'm absolutely
administration
confident that
started.
they will have that information. And that the information will be highly compelling in terms of demonstrating the effectiveness of design build in what we've been able to do to date. To the other part of your question, again, we would certainly strongly recommend to, and I personally would strongly recommend to the next administration that it seek those additional alternative delivery tools. It's important for the capital program, and I would really recommend that be a significant part of the next administration's legislative agenda next year.
So let's get specific about a couple of areas of concern. Do you have an update in the report that you provided last night to the city council, which detailed the specific projects that you're working on with design build, which honestly, I have not had a chance to look at. Can you provide an update on the number and value of the design build contracts for which you have put out RFPs or have awarded?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. We have, I guess I would describe there be 3 different sort of clusters of design build work that we're doing. So first of all, we're currently managing 7 projects within our public buildings program. They have an estimated total value of a little over $530 million. 3 of those projects, which are the Orchard Beach and Rockaway Parks operations and maintenance facilities, plus the Dalton North Shore Recreation Center, will be in contract and start work this calendar year, 2021. Another 4, the Marlboro Center, the Chisholm Center, the Brownsville Girls Empowerment Center, and Harper Street Administration Building, which is a DOT facility, are on track for contract and notice to proceed in 2022. The second grouping is the Borough-Based Jails Program, which is approximately $8.3 billion. It includes 9 different design build contracts for the 4 boroughs. And the status of those is, as I mentioned in my testimony, 1 project for the garage and community space in Queens is underway. That's our first design build project.
Commissioner, hang on one sec. And I'm loath to interrupt you because you're giving the public so much good information, but it's hard to, I'm gonna interrupt you for just 1 second to defer to my colleague, Councilmember Brooks Powers, who has some really important questions, and we can come back to this. But again, my general point being, just put it up online for the public to see. Councilmember Brooks Powers, thank you.
Hi, good morning. I actually wanted to hear the commissioner finish as well, but I will just use the moment just to touch on a couple of things, and I'll probably, if that's okay, Madam Chair, come back at a certain point with some additional questions later. I'm particularly interested in understanding the MWBE utilization as you're I'm sure everyone knows, this past week, the Daily News had an article about the city usage of MWBEs being 3.8% in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's a significant setback on the progress that I feel the city has made in that space. And I'm particularly interested in how DDC is working in an intentional way to ensure that we are not leaving behind our MWBEs. Do you find that the design build process has helped them? Because in working with MWBEs, I've found many of them have been reluctant to apply for certain government opportunities because of the level of steps that they have to take in order to compete. In many cases with the design build bid process, which is the lowest. So how does the design build process help them? Is there anything else being done to ensure that we're educating the MWBEs on this process, and how do we help pull them up? Also, I was looking at the projects that were submitted that are current design build projects, and I see some of them have like 20 proposers and what have you. I'm interested in understanding how many of those proposers are MWBEs. So I just wanted to start with those questions, and thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony.
Thank you, council member. And I just want to give appreciation to your partnership in your community and your district for the many important projects that we're building there. And it's been a great partnership, and also for your voice on these issues. I'll just start. I really want to ask our Chief Diversity and Industry Relations Officer, Wayne Lambert, to speak to this. I'll just start by saying we are very proud of what we've accomplished during the pandemic in terms of MWBE utilization. Our numbers are very strong. As I mentioned, on the largest project that we've built during the pandemic, we had a 46% utilization. We've had a number of MWBE prime contractors building out the field hospitals, testing sites, vaccine centers. It's been a great success for us during the pandemic. And I think also we're positioned to have success in MWB contracting with design build more broadly, for which I'd like to ask Wayne to describe everything we're doing on that.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Council Member, for your concern and continued advocacy. It's much appreciated from this standpoint as well. As the Commissioner indicated, we have done a lot on the design build project to ensure that MWBEs have access to opportunities. One of the main sort of caveats there is the separating and having 30% goals on design separate from construction. So 30% on design and 30% goal on construction, ensuring that vendors on both sides of the contracting of the contract there has an opportunity to work on these projects. These 30% goals implemented. There is no waiver process. So design build teams who submit, they can't waive out of these goals. And that's important to note, because that's a major distinction between typical design build projects, where you'll see 30% on the overall project, and then the utilization sort of backloaded, if you will, sort of the lower tier work. That's not the case on our design build projects. Additionally, we count suppliers up to 60% there. So MWB suppliers also have a chance to get access to opportunities here. We utilize state and city certified MWBEs. Another sort of important caveat there, again, giving more opportunities to MWBE vendors and less excuses, if you will, for the design build teams to have when it comes to identifying MWBEs for these projects. When the proposal teams submit, when they submit their proposals, the design build teams, they also get sort of graded, if you will, on their MWBE program experience. Again, and if they don't provide us with sufficient information, they won't get that credit, and it does knock sort of design build teams out of the park, if you will, not out of the opportunity there to bid on these projects. Again, a few there also in terms of making sure that MWBEs are aware of the projects. We have a dedicated website on our DDC page. We've done trainings geared towards MWBEs to ensure that they have knowledge about design build, how the process works. Again, targeted training sessions for MWBEs, and we'll continue to have those sessions in the coming months, something that we're focused on. There's an enhanced compliance and tracking on these projects. The MWBE team, they participate in the sort of short list of meetings, if you're the short list of vendors. We meet with them and ensure that we emphasize the importance of engaging the community on these projects and the importance of identifying MWBEs. We share a list of MWBEs in the community, targeting zip codes. Again, we do a lot of take a detailed approach here, and all of these things are geared towards ensuring that the MWBEs have opportunities, and we're learning from our projects as well to ensure that we do more, listening to the MWBE community. And there's more in store that we're working on as well. But I'll pause there and see if you have any additional questions. Thank you.
I think we need to unmute Councilmember Brooks Powers.
Thank you. I always forget not to mute myself back because then I have to wait to be unmuted. But thank you for that, Commissioner and Wayne. And just as a follow-up, when you talk about the no waiver process, is that in the instance where like the lead design build contractor has to provide a plan for utilization? Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yes,
so
that's
in terms of like the actual lead roles, how are we getting MWBEs on that level? Because it's one thing, which I think is great across the spectrum of a particular project to have participation, but making sure that we're giving them opportunity even at the top. What is that? Like, is there like an apprenticeship program? Is there like a pipeline being created for it?
So in terms of getting MWBEs on the design build team, the authority, we don't have the authority to sort of dictate, if you will, the design build teams. We do encourage MWBEs to bid in joint venture. I've literally had conversations up to last night with an MWBE firm who's interested in getting on design build, and encouraging them to work together, to create the capacity to work on some of these projects. We've also lessened some of the requirements. So even for design build teams, you don't need direct design build experience to participate in design build projects. It's design build or related experience. So we've softened the language, if you will, a bit to ensure that MWBEs are included in the considerations. Can more be done there on the legislative side? I believe so. Don't want to speak sort of out of turn, but definitely I think that's something that we can do to improve chances for MWBEs getting on the projects. But in terms of awareness, we definitely get the information out there, blast vendors, have one-on-one direct calls with MWBEs, especially some of the larger firms, to ensure that they bid on these projects, or at least at minimum, if they don't come a part of the design build team, try to be a part of the first tier prime or second tier higher level prime level contracting opportunities.
I see the commissioner raising his hand, so he has my whole dynamic with this mute button.
the old unmute. Thank you. I just wanted to add, council member, that the problem of more MWB primes is something that we're more and more focused on. It's been something that the mayor has been driving us to work on, because that's really how we'll ensure a lot of minority and women contracting. It's a long process. I mean, frankly, if we put out a design build project that's $1 billion plus building, there may not be at this moment an MWB that's able to pull together a full team for that. We want to get to that point. And one of the other programs we're very excited about, which Wayne is in the midst of standing up right now, was also recently authorized by the legislature, which is our mentorship program. And that it's actually modeled on what the School Construction Authority has been doing for years. It enables us to have more experienced prime partner with an MWBE prime to lead a project and implement it fully. There's different tiers. They graduate, they get, go to grad school. I mean, it's real capacity building. And I think over time, as we do that, we will get to the point where we do have MWBE firms that are in a position to respond to an RFP for $1 billion project. And that's something that we're very, very excited about.
And I'm glad to actually hear that, especially emulating what STA has done, because feedback that I've gotten through the years has been that STA has been dynamic and a leader in this space where there's a lot of lessons learned. I would also like to, just because I know, Wayne, you had mentioned something about like lessening some of the requirements, and in some cases that's needed. But what I've found also is who's in the room that's making the decisions, right? When you have diversity in the room, oftentimes you'll find that it levels the playing field. Because I've been in spaces where I've been at the table in opportunities like this, and had my voice not been in the room and other people that look like me, it would have been kind of business as usual in terms of the selection process. So I'm not sure what the selection process may look like, but I would encourage to ensure that we are having representation on these panels in terms of race and gender, to be able to make those decisions. And then also in the mentorship program, I would hope it's a scale up dynamic so that the capacity is being built on these firms, especially New York firms, because I know a lot of times it's out of state firms that are benefiting from these pilots and these efforts as well. We want to make sure we're building up our MWBEs that are right here in New York, that live in New York, that are hiring in New York as well. And so I thank you for responding to me on that. And if there's any collateral about the mentorship program or the opportunities that you can share with my office, I would love to have it to be able to share that in my community too.
Definitely, and we'll definitely get that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're expecting to really do some rollout on the mentorship program over the next few months, including we're still figuring out with COVID how we really want to convene everybody and provide an opportunity for networking. So when Wayne's looking at various outdoor spaces where we may be able to do that near our office at the moment.
Definitely. Wayne,
yeah.
I would love to be supportive, and I'll reach out to you offline.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks Powers. I just want to recognize and welcome Councilmember Gibson, former chair of this committee. I have big shoes to fill. Minority Leader Matteo and Councilmember Grodenchik. Thank you for joining us. I actually do just want to comment on your answer to Councilmember Brooks Powers' question and line of questioning. Just to say that obviously she's particularly very engaged, and that's great, but all 51 council members should know about this and should be engaged and getting the word out and be part of the program. So just wanted to get that out there for the record. I mean, again, sending information to Councilmember Brooks Powers, thank you for doing that. Please do that. But posting it on your website and making sure all the council members know that it's posted to your website would be very powerful as well. Communication of information is always. And I'm seeing you nod yes, Commissioner, which means that you already have a plan to how to do that.
It's on our website, Councilmember. There's an enormous amount of information on our website about the implementation of Design Build and about our MWBE program. We'd be happy to talk to you if there's something you think isn't there that we should put there. We try to be very, very transparent with information to the council and the public.
And along those lines, may I ask, I was very interested to hear that DDC brought in a team to train your professionals about design build. Can you tell me a little bit more about, I guess, I'm curious to know if other agencies have been trained. Do they need training as well? How, whether or not you plan to bring that training capacity in-house to DDC so DDC can be training the other agencies, and how, and similarly, could you be training the MWBEs for applying for these RFPs?
Yes, thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. Actually, at this point, I'd like to ask our General Counsel and Deputy Commissioner, David Veroli, to respond to that. And just the context for that is that much longer than I've been around, David has been the force in advocating for the design build legislation for the city, and in really helping to set up the program and get everyone trained. So I would ask David to describe some of those efforts that we've taken as an agency, really under his leadership.
And Mr. Verley, let me just swear you in before you proceed. Do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Council Member. I apologize for my technical difficulties. You would think after 19 months I would have this down, but still struggling a little bit. But in general, just to follow up on the Commissioner's commentary a little bit before, in terms of the information, Council Member, our website that we built, dedicated design build, has all of the information, and it also serves as a training tool. In fact, as we were advocating, working with the council and other city agencies in Albany to get design build passed, we looked at the state DOT's website on design build, and we thought that was a really great tool and resource for someone who was coming new to design build. So as we built the DDC website page on design build, we looked at it as an opportunity for, as new people come into the agency or new agencies are coming on board to design build, they would have access to that information. But the first thing that we did with the support of the commissioner, and as well as the other commissioners, the commissioners from DOT, Parks, DEP, and others who had access to the design build, is we reached out to the experts in the industry. And the experts are the Design Build Institute of America. And they provide a fantastic training program. It's a 3-day program where they walk you through not only the procurement, but also the contract. And in addition, the theme of design build is, especially when you look at, unfortunately, some governments, including New York City, has been stuck in this world of design bid build where you're only going to the low bidder. We needed to have a mindset change. So when the opportunity came to get design build and we brought on the DBIA to do that kind of training, we didn't just do it to a few select individuals. We looked across the entire agency, and every unit within the agency that's going to touch a design build project, they went through that training. So whether it was my lawyers, it was our contracting officers, it was our WMBE team, it was our engineering audit team, the project managers, all the way up to the commissioner himself. He himself has sat in on the training. And that was spread across to all the agencies because we knew we also needed everybody to have this experience and this educational opportunity, including the oversights. So our colleagues at the Office of Management Budget, Corporation Counsel, Mayor's Office of Contract Services, the Controller's Office, who has a role here in the registration of contracts. We offered the opportunity to have the Design Build Institute of America come in and do that training. In addition, when you asked earlier about the training and what we're pushing out for the WMBEs, what Wayne has been doing, which has just been fantastic, is he is doing forums where we're breaking down different parts of the design build process and talking about it and doing it similar to what we're doing here in a Zoom and going through it. And we've also provided and offered the DBIA to do a training for the WMBEs that are interested in learning more about design build. And that's been great. And actually, I think Wayne has another forum coming up, I think in early November, with the WMB community to talk about lessons learned on some of the things that we have seen on our earlier procurements. So a lot of training has been going on in the city, and it's been a fantastic opportunity. Tomby, who's here with DOT, she has sat through the training along with her ACO, her lawyer team, her engineering officer. So everybody understands mindset change is going on, and we need to understand the rules of engagement to be successful in design build.
Boy, again, what a rosy picture. Thank you so much for all that detail. And Wayne, you're going to walk away like the superstar of this entire hearing. You've obviously been busy at work, doing such important trainings. It, again, just a little bit of a disconnect between what you're saying and Councilmember Brooks Powers saying that the MWBEs that she's working with find the whole thing a little complicated. So just a reminder, and here's another example, Commissioner Veroli, are you Commissioner, General Counsel Veroli? You said you've offered trainings to OMB, to MOX, maybe operations. Have they taken the trainings? I
Yes.
almost would want to see, the public would want to see, is this for real? Are the trainings annual? This is such an important thing. If the mayor's office for operations, or I guess it's the city ledge affairs, are responsible for pulling this procurement document together, do they understand what they're reporting on? And, it might be worth having a page in that document that, I know you're likely to, follow the letter of the law of what the state asks you to report on, but why not identify, who's doing the training and who exactly has gotten trained, and sort of update that on a regular basis. If you can't do it on the state document, do it on, the document that we're hoping to pass into law. These things are, it only is successful to the extent that, people really show up and learn the information. And it's so critical what you're doing. Commissioner, were you? Yeah.
We're deeply committed to making this program work, and we appreciate your recommendations in this regard.
Okay, so can we just jump over to Commissioner Torres Springer, would it be okay in terms of your timing if we just ask DOT the same set of questions about training and what they've done, and then I'm going to come right back to you.
Please.
I don't know if we need to swear them in.
They're sworn in.
Okay, great. And unmuted. Great.
So DOT also participated in this DBIA training. I'm personally DBIA certified. I'm leading the design build unit for DOT Bridges Division, where most of the design build projects are going to start. Across the agency, other units such as ferries will also have design build project coming up shortly. They've had training, and so have our ECHO, legal, EAB, and so on. So we do take it very seriously. We've also developed some in-house training material so that we can spread the information out. Even if someone is not directly working on DB, they need to understand the basics of it so they understand where they can contribute to the process. In addition, we work very closely with New York State DOT and FHWA, as they have a much more mature design build program. We're adopting their design build manual to be applicable for us. So that will become a tool that will be very easily available to anyone that needs to understand our process.
Oh, wow. Okay. Would that manual be online?
Yes, we have started creating a page on our website as well, on the DOT website, that has design build information, and we'll be adding more to it in the coming months.
Thank you very much for that. Good to know that the second largest design build agency will be is as engaged in knowing the process. I mean, could I also ask then, Ms. Pandya, do you have your list of projects? And maybe we can, well, we'll come back to you because I really want to finish up, but I'm going to ask you the same question. The Commissioner Torres Springer was sort of rattling off his projects, all great to hear at this public hearing, but when do you think you're going to have something that you could send over to the council that has the detail that the public wants to see? Are you done with your part of the report that City Hall is putting together, but I'm going to come back just in 1 second about that. Can I ask about budget versus commitment? Commissioner Torres Springer, I think the original budget for DDC to be spent this year was 1.7 billion. And I'm wondering how far along you are in committing that amount of money.
For the current fiscal year, council member?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have those exact numbers with me today. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I would say I think we're set for a very good year in terms of getting work into contract. Generally, we're on a cycle where in the back half of the fiscal year is where we end up with, doing a lot of the contract execution and registration, for which we really need the help of the controller's office to make progress. And we hope to have that help, particularly in the new calendar year, to get some of that done. So we're optimistic about commitments. I will say we have registered in the first half of this fiscal year very significant East Side Coastal Resiliency contract, getting that going into construction. Mentioned some of the design build projects that we're on track for before the end of 2021 that are fairly significant in terms of budget commitments. So we're having a successful year in terms of building the city.
And how much money has the city committed, or has DDC committed just for the design build projects?
I'll have to get back to you on that. The registered project. I guess I was describing this in my earlier answer. The registered project to date is the Queens Community Space and Parking Facility. That's the design build project that is registered. We are on track for an additional, I believe, 3 projects to be registered this calendar year. Allison will, confirm. And then in the early part of 2022, we'll have a number of significant projects also registered. So, but we'll get back to the exact numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the public would want to know is what's your, and I understand year-end numbers, but just sort of for fiscal year 22, maybe for fiscal year 23, what do you expect to commit for the design build projects?
Yeah, happy to get back to you with that.
In particular. And on those projects, how do you plan to track the cost savings in terms of time, dollars, and also, of course, MWBEs? Giving more projects to MWBEs.
Right. Thank you. We are paying a lot of attention to that. I do want to just, since you mentioned it, take the opportunity to say there's a number of different sources of time savings that we anticipate. A lot of it, as you mentioned, is that time is money. And so on most of our projects, we're eliminating one procurement phase, right? We're able to bring the designer and the builder on at the same time instead of 2 separate procurements. And also we expect that because we have an integrated design and construction team, we avoid a lot of change orders, which is both additional costs to a project and also is a source of time delays, which costs the project. So we're anticipating 5 to 15% savings on the average project, and we will be paying attention to that and tracking that as we move forward and reporting on it.
So this is, I'm going to ask about the some pedestrian safety improvements. And I'm not quite sure who to direct this to, DDC or DOT, only because it's not clear which agency this is sitting in. But there was one that was sort of a complex corner project. The other is pedestrian savings improvements on Lexington Avenue. Were these projects, are they on track do you happen to know with design build? Because I've gotten information that perhaps had DDC done these in-house, they would have already been going on these projects where right now they're sitting in RFPs.
Right, thank you. Yeah, that was I'll add, that was another one of the groupings I'm happy to report back on. So that's in our infrastructure group. We, as you know, and I mentioned in my testimony, we have a very large obligation to improve really all 180,000 corners in the city for pedestrian accessibility. And that's a program that we've divided responsibility between Department of Transportation and DDC. We're making good progress on that program. Again, the pandemic slowed a number of things down, but we are putting out and have put out one of those contracts for a design builder. We think it is suited to a design build mode of delivery, but we want to make sure it actually is somewhat unprecedented to treat a project like that as design build, just because the big advantage of design build is when you're clear about what the conditions are up front, you can find a good way to share risk with the contractor. That's the big advantage of it. And with the pedestrian ramps, you there's a lot of uncertainty about what you're going to find once you start modifying one of those ramps. So we have one contract that we're trying it out on. It is in procurement. I don't, I think it's progressing, and I don't anticipate any issues in terms of timing. I also mentioned that we're making a series of pedestrian safety improvements on Lexington Avenue in Midtown, which is also out there as a design build project that's in procurement. And again, as I mentioned, we expect significant time savings with these projects, both because we don't have to go and do a design procurement and then a construction procurement, but also when we get out there, very often our projects are slowed down because something is discovered that wasn't anticipated by the designer. The contractor has to say, can we go back, talk to the designer, figure out what to do about
True
this.
on every project,
get
right?
a change order. In the case of design build, everybody's there. Everybody's already out there, part of the project team, and can very quickly make decisions about how to make an adjustment. And we really won't lose time. So that's really where we expect a significant amount of time savings.
Okay, so can I just ask on that specifically? And I would love to see a report on this one in particular. So the pedestrian ramps have the current ones. We've seen a lot of that work, certainly in my district. A lot of corners have switched over, or the improved version. But you're saying those projects were with the old design bid build. We still haven't gotten the results of the design build yet. Yeah. Is that a yes?
Yes, that's right. I just want to be clear that our what we call the complex pedestrian ramp program, those are not designed in-house. Those are all designed by design consultants. So it's not, that there is the two procurements that are always required for that in the design bid build mode, whereas we're taking advantage of the opportunity in design build to save time.
Could you report on the success or failure, because that'll be something of a baseline, right, for the current projects that you're doing, sort of on those current ones where the contractors are already out doing the work, sort of, can you use that as a baseline to compare it to the design build going forward?
Absolutely.
Do you think you could get us the baseline information soon?
I'm sorry,
Soon,
could you clarify
is
for me
that
what you're
something that would be difficult to pull together, sort of the baseline information? How long the design bid build process took, how much it costs per whatever component you measure things by. That would be, I think, really important to have as we move forward and think about, whether or not, you would want to use that, I imagine, as a compelling piece of evidence for the state when you go back for reauthorization.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to do that.
Okay, how long would that, how quickly do you think we could get that baseline information?
Let me, I don't want to make a commitment that we can't meet, council members, so let me go away and make sure I understand the request, and then we'll get back to you about that.
Thank you. And here's, I'm just a council member, so I'm not looking to overcomplicate things. This is one of those KISS projects, keep it very simple. Just sort of, how long did the process take? What did it cost per whatever mile or number of curb cuts, whatever it is, something very straightforward as a baseline. In other words, also sort of using the criteria you're going to use for giving the information to the state about design build. It would be the same type of thing you'd be looking at, but just with the design bid build numbers. And on that, I would love to take you or someone for a walk around my district, because many of these new curb cuts are already broken or were never actually fulfilled. I have a couple corners where they, pulled out all the stuff that's there, but then replaced it with asphalt. I don't mean to get in the weeds. It's just that I have an exact example from my district. And I love someone who, is responsible for, reporting on whether or not bidders do a good job, to know what's actually going on.
Yeah, and on that point, Councilwoman, we're happy to do that. I will say DOT has and it's probably different folks than the folks that are on the hearing today, but has a very large pedestrian ramp program set up. And it's possible that was, some of the corners you're mentioning were in-house forces versus contractors, but that we'll get that information to them and make sure that they're out there taking a look. And certainly we have to remedy those conditions immediately, because that's our obligation, is really to make these safe and accessible.
Well, and also I'm just one of 51. I use that as just an example. My little district, there's so I don't know how you track these things, but even just now, and I don't mean to belabor this point, but for DOT, then they have in-house work to do, in-house people to do this work, plus you contract out, plus we're going to have this new design build process. Is that what I'm hearing?
Contracting out, it may be in the form of design bid build or design build. Those are just two different ways of contracting.
Sure. I mean, it strikes me then baseline would include doing it in-house as well, that you would want 3, those 2 as a baseline. I'm going to move on. And again, if any of my colleagues want to ask questions, they should feel free to raise their hand.
Chair Rosenthal, I just want to flag the time because you had expressed concern earlier.
You know what? Thank you for that. I am going to step away. I unfortunately have a press conference about a successful food giveaway program in my district. So I am going to step away. Thank you for 15 minutes. And I think Councilmember Adams, who, by the way, did an amazing job co-chairing a hearing yesterday, and also did an amazing job at the Public Design Commission yesterday. And I'm really glad you'll be taking over this hearing, because I so admire you. So thank you for that. I'm going to say chair for the moment, Adams.
Thank you, Chair Rosenthal. Thank you for the honor of substituting for Chair Rosenthal. I have a couple of questions, and then I'm going to move on to my colleagues to see if they have any other questions or follow-up at this point. So it's good to see all of you and welcome again to the hearing today. My first question is for DDC. Commissioner, great to see you as always. The way members of the administration have talked about design build in the past has made it seem like it's good for a larger scope of projects than they seem to be using it for now. Can you identify, broadly speaking, which types of capital projects are best suited to design build and which types of projects are poorly suited for design build?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Adams, and it's great to see you as well and to work with you. I just want to be clear. We think design build is a very important tool for us, and we intend to use it very often. I mean, as with anything complex within the city, it takes a while to get things ramped up. And that's happening over time, as I think I've described in other times during this hearing. There's a few different factors that determine whether design build is appropriate. The really big thing I mentioned earlier is the risk profile of the project and whether we think it will realize the benefits of cost savings, time savings, and innovation that we hope for. So, we do look at, we have at DDC a unit that we've created in the last few years called front-end planning. And every project that comes to DDC to build goes through front-end planning. And so now part of that process is we look carefully at a project and say, are we actually going to be able to realize time, cost savings, and get the innovation that we want out of design build? And that's how we make that determination.
Great. Well, there's always been a lot of enthusiasm around design build. Needless to say, that's why my colleague Chair Rosenthal was so anxious about moving us along. In the process, it just seems like we've kind of stuck for a little bit. What are the factors that dictate whether design build would be appropriate when you're doing that front end planning? So what are you working with?
Well, as I said, I mean, we evaluate according to a number of factors. It's really about the sharing of risk and whether we're in a position to share risk. This actually is a good opportunity. I wanted to ask our Assistant Commissioner, Allison Landry, who's running the design build program on our public building side, if she might, having been part of that process in a lot of detail, if you might spend a couple of minutes describing which criteria we're applying.
Sure. Thanks so much. And good morning, everyone. So some of the things that we look at, and this is always in collaboration with our sponsor agencies. So whether that's parks or DOT or NYCHA, but the agencies that are partnering with to deliver these projects, we're looking at things like, what are the site conditions? What are the existing buildings that are adjacent? What are the access points? Are there any conflicts with infrastructure? But so some of these kind of pieces that would help us understand how complicated is the site? How complicated are the conditions for the scope that we're going to have to work with? And is this something that we can easily define upfront so that when we get into a contract point with the design builder, they understand what they're going to be entering into contract for, and they can scope that for themselves at this early phase when we bring them on board early. Another point that touches on is how easily we can define the scope in the beginning. One of the reasons why on our pilot program we're doing all new buildings is to ensure that we know kind of quantifiably what is the scope of this facility. It's a new pool, or it's a new greenhouse, or it's a new maintenance facility, but it's things that we're able to clearly define, have a mutual understanding with our sponsor, and then document that so that it can go into a design build procurement. So the items that Commissioner Torres-Springer touched on with our risk are really, how can we understand what are the different attributes of this project and then document it so that when we do a design build procurement, the industry will understand what this project is and be able to put forth a proposal for that they're confident in at this early stage of the work.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Let's talk a little bit about what how savings are calculated when we talk about design build, because we know that it saves time and money, but how do you actually calculate the savings, and what do you use as a baseline?
Right. Yeah, thank you for the question. We do have some preliminary results on that we've reviewed and quantified. On average, we expect design build to save us 1 to 2 years on the low end in total project durations compared to design bid build. Although I was mentioning initially during my testimony that at least a couple of the projects that we've been able to move forward thus far, we've saved more like 3 years. And we expect to save approximately 5 to 15% of total project value, which includes, very importantly, limiting the number of change orders during construction. We continuously see change orders under design bid build based on the separate and distinct design and construction entities that are only starting to work together once construction starts. So we expect to have more information to share as we continue the successful completion of several of these design build projects that we've mentioned, but it really will be in terms of comparing it to both initial project budgeted cost, which is where we start with the project, and also what the final cost at completion ends up being. We'll be comparing to those two anticipated costs and also to comparable projects that we've built in the design bid build mode.
So I think that you answered this question in your answer to the last question, but I just want to get a little more specific. So do you know if any projected design build savings have already been reflected in the capital commitment plan, or have any savings been realized yet?
I think I did answer, as I said, the time savings are clear up front. The anticipated cost savings are a little bit more complicated in terms of capital commitment plan because they may not be reflected in the initial cost that's in the budget or part of the initial contract. It's really about how much we don't spend. Very often, and I think I may misstate these numbers, but from other work we've done, I think on average, we end up with something like 8% of total project cost as change orders for our public buildings and more like 12 or 13% for our infrastructure projects, although I have to say I might have reversed that. And so it's really about avoiding those additional costs where we see the big benefit.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. The last couple of questions I'd like to direct for DOT, probably Ms. Pandya, welcome. Replacing the 61-year-old BQE cantilever has been front and center in the media everywhere. And the push for design build dating all the way back to June 2017. So in lobbying for design build, DOT Commissioner Trottenberg promised that design build authority would result in a savings of as much as $158 million and 2 years construction time on just this one project. DDC and DOT have now had design build authority for the BQE since March 2018. Given the shifting scope of the BQE repairs, is design build part of any of the repair work that's already underway or which is being scoped right now?
So the near term within the year construction that we anticipate doing is not conducive to design build. So that is a traditional contract. Going forward, the longer term work that we're looking to do, which is the preservation effort, we will be reviewing to see if there are portions that could be broken out. Certain portions can be broken out to be, apologize, there's a fire drill behind me.
Okay.
The preservation work we're looking to do coming up over next several years, we will be looking to see if there are portions that could be broken out that could progress as design build. That is to be determined as the design develops.
Okay, I think you answered my next question as well and your answer as well. So thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask if there are any questions. Any other questions from my colleagues?
I think Councilmember
That-
Rosenthal had wanted us to go through the list of the projects that DOT is doing as well. I'm not sure if you want to do that.
Yes, please.
Sure. So we are currently in the process of finalizing owner's rep contract. So essentially, these are consultants who would be augmenting our staff in completing the procurement and the actual project delivery under design build. So those contracts are nearly complete. We're going through the final registration steps. In addition to that, we're working on 2 projects in the Bronx, 183rd and 188th Street over Metro North. The design approval has to go through state and FHWA, so we're awaiting that process, but that will come out as a design build RFQ early next year. Following that will be 4 Belt Parkway bridges. That is part of the system that we've been working on for several years. That will be later this year. And in addition to that, our ferry division is also putting out a resiliency project related to the ferry facility early next year.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask this question because it's a thorn in my side, and I think I know the answer, but is the Van Wyck extension any part of design build?
I'm not sure what portion you're referring to, because the Van Wyck project overall is with New York State DOT. They're working on that, and they are doing it as design build.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much for your testimony today. Council, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Interim Chair Adams. Next, we will hear from IBO, if IBO comes to the camera. Hi, Jonathan. I'm going to swear you in. Following IBO, we will hear from members of the public who have signed to testify. Mr. Rosenberg, do you affirm that your testimony will be truthful to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? I missed your audio. Could you speak one more time? We do not have your audio, unfortunately.
How about that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Thank
I
you.
do. I still do.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Your testimony, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Rosenthal, Chair Adams, and members of the Subcommittee on Capital Budget. I am Jonathan Rosenberg, Director for Budget Review at the New York City Independent Budget Office. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today regarding Intro 2328, which would require the administration to provide reports on the status of the city's design build contracts. IBO's role is to provide nonpartisan information on the city's budget to members of the City Council, other elected officials, and the public. IBO does not generally make policy recommendations except in the case of proposals affecting budget process. As such, we generally support efforts to increase government transparency, particularly when it provides information in a straightforward, easy to understand form. This proposed legislation has the potential to do just that, although we have several suggestions to make the information provided more useful to the City Council and others who monitor and analyze the city's capital budget. For many years, those involved in New York City's capital construction program lobbied Albany for authorization to use the design build method to deliver city-funded capital projects. Proponents of employing design build in New York City's capital program see it as a way to save money and enable agencies to complete projects in a timelier manner. Although research on the effects of this policy, particularly for infrastructure projects, remains somewhat inconclusive. In December 2019, Governor Cuomo signed into law S6293A, authorizing the city's use of design build for certain types of capital projects. IBO appreciates the council's efforts to gain a better understanding of the city's design build program in order to provide policymakers and researchers with the data necessary to analyze the advantages and disadvantages of design build. We recommend the following changes and additions to the proposed legislation. First, we feel that the legislation should require additional information on the pre-contract award phase, including information about the responses to the request for qualifications and request for proposals, as well as a summary of the final scores for all bids that the entities submitted. This information should be provided both at the project level and aggregated across projects by year. Additionally, Intro 2328 calls for the reporting on the agencies involved in such projects. We suggest this section of the legislation be clarified to require the new report identify the managing agency for each project, as well as the project's client agencies. Project milestones and cost projections. In order to allow for a rigorous evaluation of design build, the legislation should require reporting of detailed information on original and current project milestones and cost projections. Original cost estimates should be presented by project phase or at some other relevant level of granularity to allow for comparisons across projects. Each phase's original cost estimate should have a corresponding current estimate or actual cost in the case of a completed phase. Additionally, details on original milestones for each project phase should be included along with current updated milestones or actual milestones, again, in the case of completed phases. Inclusion of this data would allow for a more comprehensive analysis of design build project delivery, particularly in comparison to similar non-design build projects. Next, we feel that there should be a detailed methodology of estimates. The legislation calls for the administration to provide estimates of how much time and money have been saved by the use of design build for capital projects. Without a detailed presentation of the methodology by which cost savings are estimated, however, it is impossible to make meaningful comparisons between projects and across project delivery types. IBO suggests that the legislation either describe the methodology used to produce the estimates, or at a minimum, require the administration provide information and supporting data for the estimation methods used for each project. Lastly, minority and women-owned business enterprise utilization. The legislation could also be strengthened by requiring information on the number of design build contracts awarded to city or state registered MWBEs. At the project level, it would be useful to collect information on the contractor's MWBE participation goals and utilization plan at the time of contract award, as well as updates on current progress towards meeting these goals. As you know, Section 13 of the 2019 state legislation authorizing the use of design build in New York City requires that an annual report be submitted by the city containing information on each design build contract procured pursuant to the act. The report is required to contain a description of each such design build contract, information on the procurement process, including a listing of responding entities that demonstrated the capability to perform the contract, the total cost and estimated savings resulting from each design build contract, and the participation rate of and total dollar value of payments to MWBEs under design build contracts. Legislation passed by the council should build upon the data and reporting already required by the existing state legislation. And I'd like to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I appreciate that. Has IBO done any work around estimating the time and cost savings that design build provides to either the city, generally with respect to any specific projects?
In regards to specific projects, no, not so much. We have done some analysis at certain levels. It's nothing that's been released publicly yet. I know that we've done some internal work. I could get back to you on the specifics of that, but as of right now, nothing that we have published. I know that we've contemplated, but partly one of the reasons is because the information that we have, the data is not, we don't have probably the necessary data to make the appropriate comparisons. So this legislation would allow us to do something like that. And that's why we, of course, always appreciate the increased amount of transparency on these types of things.
I see. Okay. All right. So just as a follow-up, if there were a specific project that a member was interested in, could IBO do that analysis upon their request?
Of course, we would definitely make the attempt. We would do our best. We always try to take members' requests, and get them done. If we don't have the ability, we would tell you that. But I think we would welcome any requests especially from council members, as always. Our door is always open to council members' requests, as you probably know.
Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, council.
Okay, and now we are ready for the public portion of the hearing. Once your name is called, a member of your staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set a timer and ask that you may begin. upon the request of members of the public, we're going to call a panel of the representatives of NYCRA who are sitting together, Mr. Rudolph, Mr. Cervoni, and Mr. Cipollone, and we understand that Mr. Goldstein will simultaneously be unmuted to answer any questions that arise. Let's please set the timer for 12 minutes. Thank you, gentlemen. You may begin.
Time starts now.
We're good?
We're good.
All right. Am I sworn in?
The public doesn't need to be sworn in. You may speak when you're ready.
Perfect. So based on this hearing, what I'm seeing is there's three major points: the tracking of the projects, the minority participation, and how that's going to be utilized, and possibly get minority owned companies to be prime contractors, and then job selection and how D&B is being utilized. So we represent a group of about 12 or 13 contractors that do primarily projects on the infrastructure side of the Department of Design and Construction. So we're doing mostly the roads, the underground, the sewers, the water, and on that side of the house. Some of us cross over to the structure side, but not many. Our group in general performs about 70 to 75% of the DDC contracts on the infrastructure side that are released each year. And we've been working with DDC on some of these D&B issues and other issues as a group to try to make this more seamless. Just as a point of fact, we didn't find out about design and build until a month before the first RFP was due. So even though DDC talks about all these symposiums and seminars and outreach, we found out about it when they dropped the RFP back in January. So our concerns were not really heard until after the RFPs dropped, or RFQs as it is. So that's just a point in fact. I think that the design and build program is an excellent tool for the municipalities and the agencies to utilize for projects that are a little more complex and can add value engineering, where increases and new technologies or different methodologies or specialties of construction of different contractors and designers can unite to now bring a better product and stay within their specialties. And as we've seen with DOT and with DDC, also, I'd just like to congratulate Jamie Torres on his new job at the MTA, and good luck to him, because I think he's going to the MTA now. So in our venue of design and build, the underground system, as you know, is extremely complex, and there's a lot of unknowns, which is what really drives a lot of delays on our projects. And I know Commissioner Rosenthal said she wanted to take a walk in her district. I know she's on the Upper West Side. We're doing some work up there. I would love to take a walk with her and go over some of the problems that she sees, and then show her some of the stuff that we do on a daily basis. So staying on point, I think it's a great tool for buildings, for bridges, for elevated roadways. In a lot of cases, these projects have clear line of sight on what the goals are and how to achieve them. When you delve into the infrastructure and underground, we now have a ton of unknowns, and most of that is due to the utilities that are underground, and those utilities that the city partners with to perform these jobs under some joint bidding or other formats of contract, they don't do any pre-engineering on these projects. So we're basically hitting or uncovering their interferences as we go. So that's why a design and build for our type of work and the jobs that they've selected for design and build are really, it's not only not necessary, you're adding layers of cost and layers of bureaucracy in this specific case. So we talked about the ped ramps, the complex ped ramps. In that RFQ, there was 49 corners that were identified. Actually, they weren't even identified. We got a little teeny map that was about the size of half an 8x11 paper with dots on it that showed where approximately that work would be performed. So we had to put together an RFQ with a consultant and bring that to DDC and submit that, and then they grade it, and then they come up with a short list. Now, this specific project, EDC talks about in-house design, or actually Jamie said all PedRAMP projects are designed by consultants. That's not true, because we're currently performing and have performed over the last 5 years some complex corners that had been pre-designed and some that were task order driven. And a task order contract is when you bid the contract competitively, you get awarded the contract, and the contractor goes out with the city personnel, and we design the corner on the fly. And that's because it's a very simple thing to do. You walk outside, you see the infrastructure that's in the way of performing and building to DOT's specification for a ped ramps, either a single or a double, and you have a spec you build to. So if there's a catch basin that has to be moved, or if there's a fire hydrant or a street light that has to be moved, we move that and then we build the corner. This is not something that's complex at all. It's something we do on a daily basis and on the fly in conjunction with New York City. So in that specific project, New York City is expecting a budget of $6 to $7 million for that particular project. Had that project been put out as a competitive bid, as a task order contract back in March, one, that job would already be working now because it would be registered, and that contractor who won would be working on that job already. And two, in the current market where members of our community and our group are going to be out of business by March because they don't have any more work, we're now adding a layer of delay for D&B on a project that didn't necessarily warrant it. And the bids for that project would be under $3 million for that specific project. I can guarantee you that. Okay. And let's look at the budgeting of DDC so far. Now, Jamie talked about the East Side Resiliency Project, which I think there's been $1.5 billion worth of work released for East Side Resiliency. But that that comes from the Sandy budget. So there was other federal funds that were put in place there other than the $1 billion that they have to spend in fiscal 2022. Now, I also bring up the East Side Resiliency Project because that's an extremely complex project that would have been perfect for design and build. Because now you can bring in new technologies to meet the goals of what the project wanted, and you have such a large parameter. You're raising grades, you're reconstructing roadways, you're putting in walls and cantilevers and all kinds of structural engineering, that there's many ways to accomplish this, but that job wasn't design and build. We're now picking a simple job or two simple jobs that could have been working already this year and aid in the economic recovery of the city by putting people to work, and that didn't happen. So let me give you the synopsis so far of New York City had a budget of $1.7 billion for fiscal 22. That was what was presented to us, I think, back in November of last year. So we understand that budget was cut by 40%, which still leaves just over $1 billion, which is still a pretty hefty program. So now, thus far in fiscal 22, they have bid on both the infrastructure side and on the structure side, $208 million. I bring this up specifically is because on the infrastructure side, the engineer's estimate, which is the way that they said they're going to track cost savings, right? On design and build, they expect to save between 5 and 15%. And this was Jamie's words, 5 and 15%. And they're going to track that based on what the original estimate of the job would have cost. So DDC's engineer's estimate across the spectrum of jobs that they've bid thus far was $151 million, okay? The contractors came in at $126.5 million with a savings of $24 million to the city, and that's a 16% state savings. So when Jamie says he's looking to save 5 to 15%, we're already exceeding that savings with the competitive bid process. So if we're going to track it the same way, one would think that putting out projects right now to aid in the economic recovery, put people in the street, and add to the optic of safety in the streets, especially in Manhattan, where we want people coming back in, you would want boots on the ground and more people in the street. Our guys work in the street and give that optic of people being around and aid in the economic recovery. So we know that these two projects that they're talking about are stalled. They're 100% stalled. They're not going anywhere right now. So they said they were going to award by Q1 of 22. Even if they award in Q1 or Q2 of calendar 22, the design process, that layer that's been put on top of that project, is now going to elongate that job. You're not going to see boots on the ground for another year to 18 months, because now it's going to become a contest between the designer who was selected to hand over their designs to the city for review. Now, the city hired a consultant to review the designs of the other consultant. So if there's a disagreement in what should have been done, it's just going to keep getting kicked back and forth. And this is the problem we see. I'm not against design and build at all, but in our genre, one of the things that we were specifically afraid of, and there's only been 2 RFQs and 2 shortlists. One of the things we were specifically afraid of, we brought this up with Jamie and Eric McFarland and all the brass on the infrastructure side, was now it's going to be a club. We're going to create a club, and we're going to have a kingmaker. So the 2 projects that were bid, the ped ramps and the pedestrian safety on Lexington Avenue. Okay. What's that? That's 12 minutes.
You can feel free to continue.
Thank you. That was in fact 12 minutes, but you may continue.
Oh, wow. Thank you. All right. You're a little quick on the trigger there, Noah. But anyway. And Chair Rosenthal, I'll take a walk with you anytime in your district, and you can take a walk with DDC and get their perspective, and I'll give you my perspective. I've got a bunch of work going on up there on the Upper West Side. I can walk you through some of the stuff that we're doing, and you can see some of the complexities and why some of the D&B may work and some of it may not within our genre. So on the ped ramps, you had 3 contractors that were shortlisted: J.R. Cruz, Rastani, and Oliveria, okay? A month later, you had 3 contractors shortlisted on the Lexington Avenue project: J.R. Cruz, Rastani, and Triumph. So we said we didn't want to have a club being created and putting a kingmaker in charge. And on 2 projects, you have 2 of the same contractors being shortlisted when there were 20 to 25 RFQs submitted. And I think everybody can agree, you guys don't know this, but my firm, my company, has done more complex corners in the last 5 years than any other company in the city. There's no doubt about it. I could put it on the table for you. There's no doubt about it. And we did all this stuff. Most of it we designed in-house, and without that layer of cost on top to have a designer now partner with us. So we would go out with the city and just design that specific location. All right. Second component, that's kind of into job selection and tracking costs. The second thing is the minority participation. Again, we have no issues at all with the minority participation, but we have asked, because of a partnership with the city and the utility companies, and now with the designer, I think it was Lambert, Wayne, he pointed out that it's a 30% on design and then on the contractor as well. That's not a problem, okay? But here's the problem. So there's a list in DDC of contractors, minority and women contractors that are approved by DDC. Fantastic. We just looked it up. There's about 7,500 listed. One of our complaints over the past 10 years has been, one, many of those that are listed are no longer functioning companies and haven't been removed from the list. So the list wants to be big so that we say we have all these companies, but that's not the case. On top of that, there's not a lot of minority-based companies that do the subcontract work that we as contractors perform underground. So what we've done is we've reached out to the utilities, and we sent a letter to Jamie and we sent a letter to each utility company, because if they're partnering with the city, then they should also provide a list of minority contractors that do work for them. So we have the opportunity to hire them to meet our goals. So what's happening is they don't even respond. They don't even respond to us. But now to meet our goals, we have to look into just contractors that we can subcontract to, that normally we do this work. We perform that work. So we're subcontracting it out, which is not a problem. But I don't have the ability to subcontract out a lot of the work that the utilities have on these projects. And now it takes away from me performing DDC work that I would have otherwise performed, and I could sub out the other work. So while everybody says we're partnering and we're doing this and that to mentor, and it's a lot of that is a little bit of smoke and mirrors, because the utilities don't help us at all in finding minority contractors to perform their work. What was the other thing I wanted to get
I'm going to
into?
let you finish up with your third point, and then I have a very quick question for you, and then I'm going to turn it back to Chair Adams.
Yeah, and Chairwoman Brooks Powers, to your point with the apprentice program and mentoring and things like that, while the city can perform and provide those training services for contractors that to help them get into a position where they can be a prime a bidder on a project, we have to be very careful with that, because there's a state law that's called CUF. It's commercially useful function. It's specifically about mentoring and helping a contractor now develop itself, and it's so specific. And there was a project put out in 2019 by DDC, and they actually had a 50% minority participation. And the way they wrote the contract, the prime contractor had to assist in ordering, directing, and mentoring the minority contractor so that they could segue to be a prime. It sounds great, but every single one of those things that was in the contract was illegal. And
I thank you for that, and I'm familiar with it, and that's why I think the city has to do more at looking at possibly breaking up some of these bid opportunities so that it is a space where we're able to scale up these businesses. I also think that why I emphasize who's on the panels is because it's not necessarily that the minority and women-owned businesses are not skilled enough to do it, because they've been doing a lot of this work for quite some time. Oftentimes, it's just some agencies have a tendency of getting the lower hanging fruit, and they may not go with someone that they've never worked with before, but that doesn't take away the skill and ability of that company to do the work. So I recognize that, and I just want to make sure that I emphasize that, because I have literally witnessed with my own eyes that when the playing field is leveled and you put up a minority or a woman firm against other large firms, there have been cases where they've blown them out the window, and it's just a matter of having the opportunity. But I hear you with the legal concerns there. And I think we have to get creative because I think it helps business on all fronts when we're more inclusive. It builds capacity on all fronts. And it ensures that everyone gets a seat at the table when we are creating opportunity for all and not the same few.
And to your point, if I can respond to that,
Absolutely.
I agree with you. But the design and build program, by taking a field of 20 or 25 packages and only shortlisting 3, does the exact opposite of what you're saying. Because in the competitive bid environment, and I think some of the training and some of the mentoring can be, how to obtain the proper insurances, how to obtain the bonds, because those are the things that are daunting, right? It's really not that difficult, but it's a daunting task for someone who doesn't know anything about it. So I think that's where the function can come in and assist in that manner. And then when you have a low bid format, you're giving everybody an opportunity to put a bid in on that job, where under design and build, like I just pointed out, the 2 jobs that were bid only had 4 contractors on both jobs selected for shortlist, and 2 overlapped on both jobs. So it actually reduces the competition.
I hear what you're saying, and I apologize for jumping in late.
Oh, absolutely.
But may I just ask, it sounds like you've been in the business of doing this work a long time.
A little bit.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, and I really understand this point about the city having 7,500 names, but, maybe, some number don't exist anymore. Are you familiar with the MWBEs that do this work? Do you know of any?
Yeah, because we have to meet our goals, and we're always looking for somebody new and to fill obviously areas of work that we don't normally perform.
What percentage of your work is bid out to MWBEs?
It depends on what the goals are. I mean, we exceed the goals a lot of times. Sometimes we've had contracts where the performed MWBE work was removed from the contract. So then we didn't meet the goal, but we had every anticipation of meeting it had that work not been removed.
So you're saying, and let me just make sure I'm hearing this right. So you do have firms, MWBE firms, that you can subcontract to.
Yes, because we do. We currently do.
And you do. And they do parts of the job that your firm does not do.
Ideally, that's the best way for us to meet the goals, is to subcontract out the portion of the project that we don't perform.
Right. And just to be clear, I mean, we're not meeting goals because they're random, right? I mean, this is about increasing access to work for
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. So my firm performed Houston Street from Bowery to the East River. Okay. That project had a criteria that you couldn't use a minority firm for over $1 million of participation for one firm. But we had a paving company that was minority owned that we wanted to use, and that was $3 million. So we spoke with DDC. I think it was Donna Pope back then. We spoke with Donna Pope back then and asked her, like, why would we have to exclude this guy from doing the work because it's a $3 million budget, when now I have to go to 3 separate people, $1 million to meet that goal. And we already have this contractor that works with us and we know does a quality job and is going to meet, the standards for what we want to hold for the city, because the finished work is what everybody sees. And we work together and we use that firm. And I think we exceeded the goals on that project by quite a bit.
Right. And the city gave you the authority to do that?
Yes, but we had to ask.
Okay. Councilmember Brooks Powers, did you want to jump in?
Yes. So just a couple of things. One, to that point that was just made, The reason that instead of going to the one that has $3 million capacity versus, having to break it up, one versus giving opportunity to three is, the goal, so that we're opening up the opportunities to other firms and so that they're not the same company. So oftentimes it may seem a bit of a arduous task for some, especially when you know the work of some companies, and I get it, your reputation is behind it. You would rather work with who you know, but the program is set out to create opportunities and also to foster new relationships. But I'm interested in the comments you made about there's been work that you've had where the MWBE portion has been removed. Under what conditions would normally require or lead to an MWBE being removed?
Scope change.
Yeah, it was a change of scope on the project, and we had an approved MWBE plan and subcontractor plan total with the city, and one of those scopes was removed from the project, and that was not because of us at all.
Right. And so when that's removed, does it not shift to another portion because the 30% is across the program? Or
Well, ideally, yes, but when in this specific case, 95% of the project was complete, and then that goal, that scope was removed, and how do I meet a goal within such a short space? And there's just not a lot of work left. So, you have to look at each thing in its context.
Okay, thank you.
What was the nature of the work that was taken out of the scope?
If I may, Chairperson Rosenthal, it was the final restoration on the project. The city significantly reduced the final restoration limits and had a private contractor who was putting a building up do that work. I think the city probably benefited, taxpayer money not being spent on that work. It was taken out of our contract. So the subcontractor that we were using, who was a certified MBE, performed some of the work, but not all of it, because their scope of work was significantly reduced in that particular project. And we were at the end of the project. So we did have them on our job. They did perform work. They just performed the full scope of the work. And again, that's rare. It's very unique.
Again, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Adams to close unless Councilmember Brooks Powers has additional questions. But, from the bit of your testimony that I just heard, what would be, and I'm sure we'll take you up on the offer to look at the curb cuts in my district, but what I think would be even more amazing is to learn from you at another time, not at this hearing. I know we're really wrapping up, but your ideas for how we increase access for MWBEs, given your, sounds like, good history, your knowledge of the subcontractors that you've worked with. And it strikes me that you might have some insights about how we can, tweak the design build system. Off the top of my head, subcontractors are subcontractors, whether it's design bid build or design build.
That's correct.
But I would be very interested in specific examples of how you think the city could improve the program for MWBEs. But as I say, I really just want to thank Councilmember Adams for stepping in. I really appreciate that. And I'll turn it back to you. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Thank everyone, all the staff, and for everyone for your help today.
Madam Chair, if I could just make one comment.
I defer to Councilmember Adams on this only because I haven't been here, but thank you.
Arthur, I would say no, but because I like you so much, I'll say yes.
I would have said no too.
And the feeling is absolutely mutual. Chair Rosenthal, the important piece that you might have missed, and we could certainly follow up when we follow up with the issue you raised, is there are jobs out there. The pedestrian ramps was a perfect example, that the decisions DDC has made on them and may continue to make is actually wasting your constituents' tax dollars, and their delays are delaying real people from working like now when we need to be recovering. And that's what's crucial. Plus, with the cost savings of just doing the competitive bid on these projects that aren't as complex as needed for the value of a design build project, you would get on to more projects spending that savings, and therefore more people would be working sooner. So we'd like to follow up with you on that.
Super helpful insight. I mean, the one thing I would say, because I'm not at all steeped in this like you are, is you'd really have to be able to peel back the onion on that kind of statement.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because change is hard, and it strikes me that the city has had a hard time switching over, probably because of the challenges of COVID. So, I mean, I would, that's why I'd want to sort of study that a little bit more. I don't know if what happened with the pedestrian ramps with the complex corners, if that's a hiccup that happened because of change and COVID and the time, or if it's a constant, you know. And I would just want to explore it a little bit more, but point taken. And I really appreciate your point, but sort of my biggest takeaway is, you know, I would want to make sure that regardless if we're doing design bid build or design build, how do we increase access for MWBs?
I think we're both on the same track.
And if I may, just real quick, I think before you came in, Jamie Torres said he wanted he was estimating a 5% to 15% savings.
I heard him.
Okay.
I heard him.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
we're at 16% on the jobs that were competitively bid now.
I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. This has been most enlightening. Thank you very much, Arthur. I'm glad that I let you wrap that up. Thank you. There's obviously a disconnect here somewhere. And my hope, and I'm certain that is Chair Rosenthal's hope also, that we can somehow plug these holes and connect these dots to figure where these disconnects are and why they're happening, you know, for the greater good of all involved, particularly, you know, our interest in MWBEs and, you know, getting everybody on the same page to make sure that those entities are fruitful in their work and what they're doing in this entire process. So, Council, if there is no further testimony from the public.
Seeing none, we can wrap and gavel when you're ready.
All right, so we want to thank all of our colleagues, all the panelists, our general public, our finance team, of course, for participating in today's hearing. On behalf of Chair Rosenthal, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey.